Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our new ERCI webinar. It's the 70th ERCI webinar. I counted a bit some minutes ago, and it's on new approaches to intermodal rail transport today. My name is Lutz Hübner, coming from Berlin Partner for Business Technology. We are part of the European Railway Clusters Initiative, and my first words go to introduce the ERCI to you. No, first I will introduce the agenda of today's webinar. Normally we have two presentations. We have, after each presentation, a short question and answer session, and you are invited to use the chat for your questions. And for sure we will present you some news from the ERCI network, for instance, ongoing projects, funding opportunities, and next webinars events. Yeah, the European Railway Clusters Initiative has been founded in 2010, and it's a legal entity now based in Brussels since 2022. It contains of 18 regional oriented or nationally oriented clusters, railway clusters, innovation driven from 17 European countries. And ERCI represents over 3,600 enterprises, universities, R&D institutions, educational institutions, incubators, accelerators. Most of them are small and medium-sized enterprises, 2,300. So, yes, what about the services of ERCI? It's all about bringing customers, suppliers, and supply chain opportunities together. We have some supporting instruments especially for small, medium-sized enterprises. For instance, the partner matchmaking in research and development, discovering of new market opportunities, enhancing the visibility on international level, and dealing with innovation topics which may have a good influence or a big influence for future development of the European railway system, as cybersecurity, multimodal logistics, green and sustainable mobility, human factors. We are providing some opportunities to our members in order to get more visible, like webinars and workshops like today, networking events, presence at fairs and business trips. And our yearly highlight are the ERCI Innovation Awards. Talking about the multimodal and logistics topic, which is also a topic of today's webinar, I will shortly report on an activity which has been established several weeks ago, the ERCI Multimodal Logistics Task Force, which is in operation since years, has a new topic. It dealt on or is dealing on military logistics and mobility, and therefore a first meeting took place end of February in the La Spezia port, and further activities and meetings are planned as soon as possible. If you are interested for some more details on this, please follow the link. The link will be written in the chat. So our contact data, for sure, we have an email address, we have a website presence, we are on LinkedIn, and that leads me to the first presentation. And for the first presentation, I will hand over to my colleague Christine. She is a cluster manager at RailS, our partner cluster in Saxony, and she is to introduce our first speaker. Christine.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, welcome. Good morning to everybody. Yeah, my name is Christine Lorenz Knoll. I'm Deputy Managing Director of RailS. It's a railway industry cluster in Germany. And for me, it's a big pleasure to introduce you today CargoBeamer. CargoBeamer is one of our members, and especially one of our very visionary members. And CargoBeamer is a pioneer in the combined road rail sector and works every day very ambitiously on boosting the much needed shift from road to rail across Europe. And the best thing is CargoBeamer not only has the vision, but also an innovative transhipment technology. And that's why CargoBeamer won also the ERCI Innovation Award in the last year. Yeah, but for more details about this new transhipment technology, I bring with me a real expert in this field. It's Tim Krause. Tim heads the communication and marketing department at CargoBeamer, and he joined the company in 2020. And since then, he managed its external communication affairs. And he's based at the company's headquarters in Leipzig in Germany. And before we start with the presentation, one note. Tim will answer all your questions afterward his presentation. So, but you have the opportunity during the speech to write your questions just in the chat, and we will collect all the questions and answer them afterwards. And that's from my side. And Tim, now the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Lutz. Good morning, everybody. Also from my side, Tim is the name, as just said, heading the communications department here at CargoBeamer. And both me and CargoBeamer had the pleasure to receive the ERCI Innovation Award back in 2024 at the Innotransfer in Berlin. Some of you might have been there. And afterwards, now we are presenting yourself a little bit about the company, of what we're doing, about the modal shift, which is a really interesting topic in the rail freight sector, I'd say. As said, I will give a little bit of a deep dive into CargoBeamer and our technology. And then after the presentation itself, you are very free to ask any questions or raise any additional points. So let's start. I hope all of you can see the presentation. Before going into the real topics, let's say a few generals about the company. As Christine said, we're headquartered here in Leipzig. I'm personally also located in Leipzig. Company was founded about 20 years ago, has spent the first, let's say, 15 years exclusively on research and development. Has also in that process moved to Leipzig and is now headquartered here. And has been growing quite well in the last couple of years. When I've joined the company in 2020, we were approximately 25 people. Now we are around 100 people more. So there's quite a lot of growth happening around here. Next to Leipzig, we have some offices in Germany. We have another office in Frankfurt. We have 2 offices in northern Italy, one in France at our Calais terminal, which I will shed some more light on later. And we have a small office in Spain. In parallel, next to the terminals, we are constructing and operating rail cars ourselves. We have our own rail car fleet of around 430 vehicles, which we are not just constructing, maintaining ourselves, but dispatching around Europe. As said, company is CargoBeamer is a growing company. It's one of the older startups, if you want to put it like that. And we have been collecting some money recently. In the past 12 months, CargoBeamer has in total secured more than 200 million in growth capital. That comes from terminal funding from German and Swiss governmental authorities and also private investors in parallel. Which means that CargoBeamer is a 100% privately owned company, which is rather rare in the rail industry, at least in the sector we're operating in. There's no public rail company, no Deutsche Bahn or so behind CargoBeamer. It's a 100% privately owned and therefore also profit-oriented business. All right, so much for the general CargoBeamer introduction. Let's start. And I would like to start not with what we're doing, but with the question of why we're doing that. Why is there a new approach like CargoBeamer has for the modal shift? In general, the modal shift from road to rail has not been taken off that well, one could say. Why? That's a pretty interesting question, because in theory, there are many really sufficient parts about the shift from road to rail that would make the shift very interesting for companies and also for the sector in general. One can say that, you know, on highways, transport is largely still happening by diesel powered trucks. So CO2 reduction has not really been a big focus of the industry, of the general logistics industry recently. One still needs one truck driver to drive a full load of a semi-trailer around Europe. In parallel, there is a very strong lack of truck drivers happening in the industry that has been seen by an extent in the UK, for example, some years ago, where the government already thought about putting prisoners into trucks because they weren't really able to find any more truck drivers. So there is a really big need for additional truck drivers, and that will become much more urgent in the next coming years when more people will quit their jobs because of age, and very few are coming from the younger group, so to say. Last but not least, you all know that when driving your car around the highways in Europe, roads are very congested. Truck drivers have their resting periods by law. So in theory, there are a lot of pros for the intermodal sector and for putting semi-trailers, as we do, on rail. It saves around 85% of CO2 reduction. You can put one local driver at the front, and it can pull on average around 36, 38, sometimes 40 semi-trailers with one person. The other truck drivers can operate somewhere else. The other trucks can operate somewhere else. So from a business perspective, it actually makes quite a lot of sense, theoretically. In practice, that is only somewhat the case so far. When you look on the left chart, you can see the rail development compared between 2019 and 2040. In 2019, the rail sector in total was by about three quarters made up of rail without intermodal, so without the semi-trailers or containers on rail part. That largely means coal, that largely means single wagon load traffic, that also means transport of heavy goods like iron and stuff. And the road rail, or in general the intermodal segment, was only one quarter of the rail industry. If you look on it by 2040, so in about 15 years' time, this picture will have changed dramatically. You will see that almost 50% of the rail sector will be intermodal transport, will in the end, mostly, in our opinion, be intermodal transport of semi-trailers on rails. So in the end, intermodal and combined transport will be the key growth driver for the rail sector, for the rail industry. If the whole rail sector is destined to grow, if they're destined to have additional volumes on rail, both our opinion and also studies as from the German Ministry of Transport have shown that this will be driven by putting semi-trailers on rail, and therefore by operating in the intermodal, or how others would call it, combined transport. If we look on it on the right chart, there's still a very, very big gap to fill until 2040. You can see the growth that has been happening in the intermodal sector in Germany from 28 to 2022, so over a span of 14 years. And you can see that the total volume on rails has been growing from 73 million tons to 105 million tons. So there's a moderate growth of around 30%. Nonetheless, there's no big leap forward in the industry. And that needs to change until 2040 if we want to achieve those goals as seen on the left. We're not really talking about achieving the modal shift targets of 25% of modal shift on rails and stuff. That's a totally different topic. We're just talking about growing the sector as ministries and authorities are expecting it's going to grow for. There are two main drivers for that, in our opinion, and I would like to shed light on that. The two key barriers on modal shift are what we identified, and is also what CargoBeamer as a technology and as a general company approach is tackling and is trying to solve. The first very, very big issue many of you might have heard of is the question of craneable and non-craneable. So if you look on semi-trailers on European roads, you will find that between 90 and 95% of semi-trailers are what the industry calls non-craneable. That means that they cannot be grabbed by a crane or by a reach stacker to be loaded onto a freight train vertically, like in a typical container terminals, crane terminals, reach stacker terminals, it would happen. That meant, until very recently, that they had virtually no real access to rail. At the same time, if you want to achieve those growth rates, like I just outlined in the previous slide, you need to address that. That is the first real big barrier, in our opinion. The second real big barrier is terminal capacities. In recent years, and we have, as an operator, have experienced that ourselves. If you are looking for an attractive slot in a combined transport terminal to operate, let's say, 5 trains a week, 1 train a day, at an attractive time slot, it is very, very complicated. Terminals in the end are saturated. They're full or almost full, and there's no real big gap of capacities that could still be fulfilled. How are we gonna change that? Regarding the first barrier, regarding the rail access for semi-trailers, in our opinion, and that's also in line with some other intermodal operators that are having a similar approach in mind, you need to address all semi-trailers in the European industry. You need to be able to tell your customer, your freight forwarder, that they can bring any semi-trailer in their fleet, or almost any semi-trailer in their fleet, to the terminal, and that any of their units can be shipped on rail. That's a must-have in our opinion. We have a technical solution for that allows us to load any semi-trailer on a train, whether that's a craneable or a non-craneable type, whether that's a curtain sider or a silo or a refrigerated unit, it doesn't really matter. As long as, let's say 100%, technically it would probably be 99%, of semi-trailers are actually able to travel on rail. That has not been the case with other technologies in the past, let's say 15 to 20 years. Second bottleneck is terminals. While there are many approaches to increase terminal capacity, like digitalization and stuff, we believe that real new capacities can only be collected and realized by, at first, building the terminals, that's for sure, and secondly, by making those terminals much, much more efficient. We as CargoBeamer have developed a different way to load and unload semi-trailers. We're doing that in parallel and also horizontally. And that is just much more faster than the typical crane or reach stacker technologies that have been out there in the past. I will go into a bit more details about that now and then in the following slides. As said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. So let's give it a comparison. What you're seeing here, even though it loads a container now, is the status quo in the industry, so to say. So each unit, also seen with the reach stacker here, has been loaded and unloaded from trains after each other. It's a sequential process. It's a process that touches each unit after it has been touched, after it touched the previous unit. We as CargoBeamer, as you can see in the little teaser of our Calais terminal here, have a very different approach. We touch all semi-trailers at the same time. We handle all semi-trailers at the same time. which allows us to be just much more faster and to have a much faster turnaround of trains inside the terminals. If you want to see some more details, please be patient. There will be some more about the Calais terminal processes later on in the presentation. Very general process in the CargoBeamer terminal looks like this. A customer, typically a freight forwarder or shipper, sends their units or brings their units to the terminal. It's checked in, it's placed on a parking lot, and the driver and truck leaves the terminal almost immediately, typically within 5 to 10 minutes. Ideally, from operations, it can take another unit that has been delivered to the terminal from the rail side earlier. So it automatically or in parallel delivers a unit and grabs another unit with which it leaves the terminal and brings it again to the warehouse or client or destination or port or wherever it's supposed to be. The unit is then by our staff placed next to the rail tracks on a specialized loading and unloading pallets. And then after that has happened for the whole train, all of those loading pallets containing the semi-trailers on top of them are horizontally and automatically shifted on the train. Afterwards, you need a quick security check, and then the train is ready to depart again. What does it mean in terms of saving time? Saving a lot of time, actually. What you're seeing here is an approximate process of a CargoBeamer terminal on top and the regular crane terminal on the bottom. And you will see that in regular operations, or at least in the status quo, so to say, of the industry, loading and unloading has taken up by far the biggest chunk of the consumption time of a rail track in a terminal. One typically speaks about 3 to 5 hours in the industry. That very much depends, of course, on the terminal layout, whether you have 1 crane, 2 cranes, automated, not automated. There are a lot of different questions. We're not going to focus on that now. We're rather going to focus on the part which we are trying to do a little better, which is the time spending for those loading and unloading processes. Because we as CargoBeamer, as just shown, push a button on an iPad and all units that are already placed next to the rail tracks are automatically and at the same time loaded on the train. That brings the whole process to approximately 20 minutes. Of course, afterwards, you need to do a safety check and stuff. That's mandatory. But then, in general, the train is ready to depart after, let's say, 1 to 2 hours, while the same process in a crane or reach decker terminal would take, as said, between 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours. So you're significantly reducing the time trains spend inside those terminals. And you can just, in the end, create a much bigger turnover of trains at the same time with that new technology. Some customers that are using that already, we're working with to date, are seen here. Most of them should be well-known names, at least in the road forwarding industry. You can see that we're working with Amazon, we're working with UPS, we're working with the DB Schenker, the DB Schenkers and Gitekas and XP, also the big freight forwarders. But at the same time, we're not just looking for big brands, for enterprise solutions, but we are mostly, or in a quite large part, look to roll out that solution for the SME forwarders, so for the small and medium-sized freight forwarders, which make up a very, very big part of the European freight forwarding industry, not just in Germany, but especially when you look towards Eastern Europe, which is very strong in terms of freight forwarding and logistics on the road. They have largely, at first, non-trainable fleets, and secondly, they have small teams, small to medium-sized fleets, which often have never seen rail before. And this is also a very big part of both our current customer portfolio, but also of our growth ambition, let's say, to allow all, and especially small and medium-sized freight forwarders to use rail, and as said, often for the first time ever. Okay, section number 2. after all those introduction, let's say, and after asking the why question, is there a need for a new approach in intermodal transport, and why do all those non-trainable semi-trailers need to go on the train? We are now taking a little closer look onto our terminals. By that, we are, of course, shedding most light on the CargoBeamer terminal in Calais, which is the first full CargoBeamer terminal in market operation so far, and which is also by a big part won us that ERCI award recently, as outlined at the beginning of the presentation. Before doing that, I would like to quickly show an overview of the current network, so of the network of trains and routes we are operating today. You can see that we're mostly working in Germany, France, and in Italy. We technically also have a little extension from our Calais terminal to Ashford in the UK. But since we're doing that on the Eurotunnel trains, on the Eurotunnel shuttle, better to say, this is not our own operation, so we're mostly excluding that from listing all the routes we're having. Calais Perpignan is our established route in France. But the biggest amount of trains is currently happening between Germany and Italy, between Kaltenkirchen and Domodossola, in fact. This has grown to a frequency of 20 trains per direction per week, which is amongst the best equipped intermodal lines, intermodal connections that is out there in the industry, especially for semi-trailers and for non-craneable semi-trailers. In terms of terminals, we have our own terminals, which is Calais and Domodossola right now, and we have partner terminals. That is a question that is often being raised. How are you setting up routes, and how are you doing the operations without having a CargoBeamer terminal on both ends of the route? We don't need that. We can load and unload our trains in regular terminals. That means either crane or reach stacker technologies. And we can therefore scale the network a little bit quicker than if we would need our own loading and unloading solution at both ends, so to say. That means that this is the current terminal portfolio, so to say. As you can see on the very left, our terminal in Calais in France, at the English Channel, very close to the Eurotunnel, has been opened in 2021 and is since then fully operational. I will go into some more details in a minute here. Our two big projects as of today are constructing the next two terminals, which is going to happen in Kaltenkirchen and Domodossola. Both are estimated to be opened in 2026. I will also show you some more details in a minute. And then that big third part is third-party terminals, which we are regularly using so far. We're using those in Perpignan, for example, in Stuttgart, Kornwestheim, better to say, and also in other locations. And those allow us to operate several routes and around 50 trains a week or train pairs a week in current operations, and therefore be a real operational business generating quite significant revenues, building a network across Europe, and making the system known among forwarders, and being able to open up new markets, which quite often have not really seen a lot of opportunities for non-craneable semi-trailers to use rail before. Focusing on the Calais terminal and focusing on that first terminal of CargoBeamer that has ever been open to the market, I would like to give some more details on that right now. You can see the terminal in 2021, beginning of the year on the right in the picture, when it was under construction. And that's actually quite interesting because we as CargoBeamer are a German company. We're located in Germany. We have German senior management for most parts. And at the same time, we opened our first ever real terminal in Calais in France. Previously to that, we have developed a testing site. We're calling that a testing terminal here in Leipzig, which has been for showcase purposes at the very beginning from 2010. And since then is mostly used for R&D operations now. We also had a pilot project at the Volkswagen production plant and headquarters in Leipzig, in Wolfsburg in Germany, at the headquarters of Volkswagen from 2013 to 2016. But since then, Calais has become the first site where we were able to construct that terminal at a bigger logistics development area, which the city of Calais and local politicians have proactively pushed forward. We were happy to be part of that, and we were happy to be allowed to start constructing our first CargoBeamer terminal from July in 2020. Means heavy COVID times. Company was much smaller by then. Nonetheless, we have managed to open the terminal within 11 months. So in June 2021. Terminal was fully constructed. It was constructed on a green field, so there was no site before. We basically laid stone in a green field, and then from June 2021 we were able to run first CargoBeamer trains from and to the Calais terminal in France, and therefore show our technology under market conditions, under real conditions, real customer bookings. With an open concept for the very first time. Since then, the CargoBeamer technology has been basically 100% in theory. It's probably 99 point something% available. So it's running very well, one must say. And we're very happy with being able to show for almost 4 years now that the CargoBeamer technology, which has for a large time been somewhat of a project or of an idea, is operationally functioning and is functioning very well, which is now putting us in a position to drive the business and drive the growth forward, to construct new terminals, to also construct bigger terminals, bigger than the site in Calais, and going forward with our growth in Europe. The CargoBeamer terminal, from a technological perspective, has a TRL level 9, so it's proven under market conditions. It is generating revenues in the million euros a year area, certainly, and it in the end has just reached its final point of maturity, and is ready for a commercial rollout, not just in Calais, but across all of Europe. In terms of operations in Calais, we have 150 parking lots, and in total 4 rail tracks, of which 2 consume the CargoBeamer loading and unloading technology, and 2 are for shunting and reach stacker operations. In total, we have 41,000 square meters. So Calais is actually quite a small site for what we are doing here at CargoBeamer and for what we're aiming to do in the next coming years. And also with those projects in Kaltenkirchen and Domodossola, those terminals are actually going to be much bigger. They are typically going to be almost double the length of Calais, which is around 500 meters in length. But we have seen that splitting trains in Calais, as we're doing, is a good start if you have a smaller site on hand. But for real operational excellency, you need those big trains, those 740 meter trains in most markets. And therefore, we are more looking forward for those big sites in the future. In Calais, next to our CargoBeamer technology, which is, of course, taking over most loading and unloading parts, we also have reach stacker on site for either special scenarios or when there's a special unit, like a container, to be loaded on the train. And as just said earlier, CargoBeamer loading, unloading in Calais happens within 20 minutes for a full train right now, and for almost 4 years now. So we have actually proven that that promise and that concept CargoBeamer has often advertised in the past, that 20 minutes for loading and unloading of a full train is actually possible. I guess many of you are very interested to see how actual process look like, and therefore I've brought a little video of ours. We are quite often showing that outline the processes inside our CargoBeamer terminal in Calais. As you can see in the link below, you can find that on YouTube. There's a CargoBeamer account, and on there it is quite easily to be found. So let's dive in. As you can see, when the driver comes to the terminal, driver has a TIN code, checks the trailer in, and then places the semi-trailer on a parking lot. It either then immediately leaves, or as you can see here now, it takes another unit that has been delivered earlier from another train with him to then exit the terminal and deliver the unit to its final destination. Those loading and unloading pallets are used for placing the semi-trailers on top of them. That is done by our terminal staff. And then when the train arrives, all units that have been placed onto those loading pallets are automatically and horizontally shifted off the train, and then at the same time, by also called shuttle beam technology, are also loaded on the train from the other side. The railcar sidewalls open and close during that process in order to allow the horizontal loading and unloading. And therefore, the whole process for a full train is actually happening within 20 minutes. You can see some more details about the Calais side. You can see that it's around 500 meters in length. It is, of course, operationally controlled by the staff and so on and so forth. And has proved our concept in northern France for some years now. That's what I can show to you in terms of operations at our Calais terminal. If there are some more questions, please feel free to ask them after the call. And now I'm also drawing towards the end of my presentation, which is gonna look a little bit into the future. As just said, Calais has been just a start for us. We are very actively working on opening new terminals, and there are two very prominent sites for us, which are actually already under or almost under construction. In Calais in Western Germany, we are working on an existing reach stacker terminal now for some years. But from this year towards next year, we're gonna build our first CargoBeamer terminal on German ground here. It's going to be opened in the second part of 2026, and will have a capacity of more than 10 train pairs a day, which is actually much more than we are able to do in Calais, just because the site is much bigger. Second project that is
Tim, sorry that I have to interrupt you, but we are a bit running out of time. Have so much information for us. And I would suggest that, or you have 1 minute for your very important points, or we skip and we go to the questions now.
No, for sure. It's the second to last slide, Christine.
Okay.
Second project also under development right now is going to be Domodossola, northern Italy. Very, very similar layout, but it's a little bit bigger. It is a current reach stacker terminal, and it's going to be developed towards our biggest CargoBeamer terminal in Europe to date, being able to do 13 train pairs a day according to current plannings. And this is looking even further into the future. What would be needed for another CargoBeamer terminal? It's a little bit of the advertising block at the very end. If you by chance have a site on hand that is between 15 and 25 hectares, so around 750 meters long, and and that easily have access from road and rail, ideally from electrified rail, of course, then CargoBeamer would be very much interested in opening some talks, since we are quite ambitious here and want to develop a network of terminals across Europe over the next couple of years. And there's still much more to go forward. So I hope I stayed within my 1 minute of remaining time. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure to introduce you to CargoBeamer. If there are any more questions after the call, please free to send me an email to the address given on the slide. And now I will hand back to Christine and Lutz for potential questions.
Okay, then thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. And you can see here there are a lot of questions, but I would suggest that we pick 1 or 2 questions, and all the other questions we send to you afterwards, and maybe you can the audience can write us maybe your email address, or we share all the questions and the answers with the presentation. So the first question was for a 740-meter train, is there any CargoBeamer terminal, and how much time would it take to unload and load such trains?
As explained, the Calais terminal we have is not 740 meters long in terms of loading and unloading tracks, but it's shorter. It's about half of that, which is why we are splitting trains once before they are entering the terminal or before they are loaded and unloaded. Both our current projects in Kaltenkirchen and in Domodossola will be of 740-meter train length. And it's actually faster if you're loading a train in its full length by that. So the splitting of the train in Calais costs us some minutes, not too many, but there are some needed for shunting operations. And if you just can basically run a train straight into the terminal and immediately push the button for loading and unloading, it is actually faster by that. That is also why we're doing it in that new layout in Kaltenkirchen and in Domodossola.
Okay, perfect. Okay, the other questions, as I've already said, we sent you the questions and also the answers also then to the audience to go to the next speaker.
Christine, as we have some minutes reserved, I think we could take the possibility to have 5 minutes for more questions.
Oh, okay, that's the new information. Okay, then the next question was, what is the split in percentages on volumes between craneable and non-craneable on CargoBeamer handled volumes?
The bigger group or the bigger split is reserved for the non-craneables. So non-craneables make up of more than 50%. I can tell you that for sure. I cannot give you the 100% exact information. I can tell you that about 5 to 10% are non-semi-trailer units. That means containers, that means swap bodies, and so on and so forth. But there are for sure still craneable units that are delivered to us and sent to us by our clients. Because in the end, the idea and concept is that a client doesn't really need to care which type of unit is delivered to our terminal. It just needs to dispatch it no matter what the unit type is. So for those clients which are, for example, also used to rail, which are probably also working with some other operators, which have a craneable fleet or of some parts a craneable fleet, they also send their units to us. But the non-craneable segment is the one that is growing more. It's the one that allowed us to win some new clients like Amazon, for example, which have no craneable units at all. They are all non-craneable, and which is also going to be the main growth driver in the industry going forward.
Okay, and I would say the last question is, Sam Gillard wants to know, I note your operations include Ashford in UK. Does the CargoBeamer concept exist there? If not, are there plans to look at the UK market?
I think I briefly touched that topic in the presentation. The CargoBeamer trains, the trains which we are dispatching ourselves, do not run to the UK, but we have a cooperation with the Eurotunnel in place, where we send those units that want to go to the UK on the Eurotunnel shuttle trains. So far, there is no very close and well developed concept for CargoBeamer in the UK, because it is quite difficult. Both when having all the legal documentation for our rail cars to go through the tunnel, through the Channel Tunnel, but in parallel also because the rail market in the UK looks a little bit different compared to the market in Europe. That means that as of right now, we have positioned Calais as the main hub for all UK traffic towards the continent or from the continent. Of course, never say never. There could be a CargoBeamer terminal in the UK in a couple of years, but so far it is not the core focus of our plannings going forward.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, do we have time for another question or?
Yeah, one.
Okay, one
question.
Okay, which one I take? So now it's about what's about the investment? What's the investment need per terminal, and how do you manage it?
Well, CargoBeamer terminals are somewhat costly. We can for sure say that. Typically, one can say that the CargoBeamer terminal, all costs involved is coming down to about 50 million, let's say. Calais was cheaper. Calais was around 30 million. But because we're building somewhat bigger sites now, it is more in the 50-ish million region. Interestingly, especially in Germany, you can get state funding for that by up to 80%. So our terminal in Kaltenkirchen, for example, is state funded from a combined transport directive, so to say, even though it's a different name in German. And around 40 of those million have been funded by the state. The remaining costs and also the general growth costs for CargoBeamer in terms of road operation, in terms of HR expenses and stuff, that is tackled by investors, and we have been looking for a new investor recently, and just closed a deal with a US-based PE, so to say, and this will also be the way to grow forward. So once CargoBeamer has reached quite a significant level and has some infrastructure under control, we also believe that CargoBeamer is going to be a pretty interesting infrastructure investment case going forward, and we're trying to develop the company towards that.
Okay, then thank you very much, Tim, for presenting us this, in my opinion, also very game-changing solution in this field. And now I hand over to Lutz.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christine. Thank you very much, Tim. Tim, I kindly ask you to check the chat again if you are identifying unanswered questions. For sure, it could be possible that you type directly answers into the chat. Maybe we have time after the second presentation, and I will hand over now to our second presentation. If I can find my mouse here. Yes. So the second presentation is on UrbFRail, the revitalization of inner urban freight rail hubs. It is done by Steve Danish from the Senate Department of Mobility, Transport, Climate Action and the Environment here in Berlin. And it's an Interreg project, was also supported by Berlin partner with some input on the potential regional potential for intermodal transport here in Berlin. And Steve is an expert in the field of rail transport since 2021. He works on urban logistics for long distance transport at the Berlin Senate. And before joining the Berlin Senate Department, he worked for the VBB, Berlin-Brandenburg Transport Association, in the planning of regional rail transport. Steve, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Lutz. Good morning from my side to everyone. Gonna share my screen now. Okay, hope you can see the presentation. Yeah, my name is Steve Danish. I work for the Berlin Senate Department for Mobility, Transport, Climate Action, and the Environment. And today I would like to present our UrbFRail project to you, of which I'm the project manager. Yeah, I want to start with a short overview of the project. Project goals. Yeah, I think I don't have to tell you again that shifting goods from road to rail and making last mile transport more sustainable is a general objective in urban transport planning. So with that background, the focus of the project is to support the development of inner city freight stations as combined transport facilities. So it was not the purpose of the project to construct facilities yet, but by providing tools, UrbFRail is intended to support spatial and transport planners in selecting suitable areas for freight transport hubs and implementing their revitalization. So there is the screening tool for evaluating the potential of inner city freight stations, and there is the development tool for the process of the development of such hubs. And also we created an online learning platform, not only to make the tools available, but also to provide further information on the topic. Yeah, here you can see our project partners. So from Germany, it was only us as Federal State of Berlin, and we were also acting as the lead partner in this project. Then we were working together with project partners from Poland, Warsaw University of Technology, and Metropolis GZM, which is the region around Katowice. And we had several project partners from Sweden, like the city of Stockholm, the Swedish Transport Administration, Trafikverket, Lindholm Science Park, and the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Just a quick view on the timeline. We started the project in August 2023. Then we had some peer review workshops in 2024, and the project ended with a final conference in January this year. Yeah, and we're very grateful to have received the funding from the Interact program, without which the project would not have been possible in that way. So I want to give a brief overview on Interact Baltic Sea region, which is an EU funding program with a focus on the Baltic Sea region. And yeah, you can see the involved countries here on the map. The cooperation, both at project level and at the level of the program committees and authorities, is transnational, which also means that the prerequisite is a consortium of at least 3 partners from 3 different countries, where the lead partner that we were in the project takes over the management of the project partnership. And we work together with our project partners here in a so-called small project, which is characterized by simplified rules, shorter project duration, and a limited funding volume of maximum 500,000 euros. But with a funding rate of 80%, that's still not so bad, I would say. Yeah, now a bit to the background of the project. I guess you know how the combined transport works. So I want to draw the focus on the transshipment terminal before the last leg. And major share of goods gets directed to the urban centers. So if the transshipment facilities are not located in the urban centers, the trucks make use of the limited urban road infrastructure. On the other hand, if the transshipment facility is located within the urban center, however, the goods for the urban center gets distributed right there. Smaller vehicles are possible, and the limited urban road infrastructure is less demanded. Now, why are we interested in the topic? As you can see here on the map on the right hand, Berlin is an urban node within a network of national and transnational transport corridors. But as you can see in the middle, that's a map of the federal state of Berlin. Out of 5 freight rail hubs in the metropolitan area, 4 of them are located beyond the city limits. And that is something we want to change because there are several benefits of having the hubs within the city. Yeah, these benefits, for example, are significantly reduced number of heavy vehicles, such as trucks in urban areas, and therefore reduced congestions. The reduced number of vehicles, of course, also comes with advantages for the environment, where transport is generally more fuel efficient and emits fewer greenhouse gases. Furthermore, the reactivation of rail freight hubs can stimulate urban development, transform neglected areas into revitalized logistics centers, potentially create jobs, and boost the local economy. And rail freight has the potential to offer more predictable and reliable transport operations than road transport and increase logistical efficiency. Yeah, well, at least in an ideal railway world, I know Germany is not at the moment, but I hope that's going to change at some point again. So to make it a bit more practical for you also, I want to introduce an example from Berlin, our trimodal terminal, the Westhafen. Westhafen is located in the center of the city, only 3 kilometers as the crow flies from the German parliament. And it is also the largest harbor in Berlin with an area of 43 hectares. There are 2 harbor basins, a container terminal, crane and rail facilities, as well as outdoor storage, sailors' halls with logistics service. And there are 2 loading tracks with a length of 350 meters each. The operator is Behala, and Behala is a federal state-owned railway infrastructure company and railway transport company with its own locomotives. A daily handling of container block trains is happening at Westhafen, and the total throughput in 2022 was 140,000 TEU. Yeah, coming back to our UrbFRail project, the initial question was how to find locations for intermodal terminals within inner urban areas, and therefore the screening tool has been developed. Purpose of the screening tool is to identify potential areas for the reactivation of inner city freight stations. And it helps planners with questions like, where are potential areas to establish? What should we consider? What do we know about the area and the surroundings? And how to decide which location is worth to develop. In terms of content, the tool deals with topics like the current status, planning, categorization, and evaluation, technology and operability, as well from railway network side and from the city side, natural habitat and surroundings, and facilities in the potential investment area. The tool is a web-based application. So after answering a questionnaire, the tool provides an automatic response according to a scoring system. And yeah, the tool and the tutorial are available at the UrbFRail learning platform. More about that a bit later. Yeah, but first, the second tool that I want to introduce is the development tool. And I will show a bit how the tool has been created, how it's structured, and which information you can gain from it. So the development tool is intended to support the work of urban and transport planners, outline a systematic process for the reactivation of a freight station, and overall, of course, make greater use of the more environmentally friendly rail transport. So while the screening tool is intended to find suitable locations, the development tool is intended to guide through the planning process. And to achieve the results that we have now, we went through several steps. After drawing up framework conditions and developing a first draft, we did mappings and tests in partnering cities. And the tool has been evaluated in 3 peer review workshops in each of the participating countries. In those workshops, we collected very valuable information that then has been used when we finalized the tool. The tool is basically a PDF file that can be used in different ways. You can, of course, use it on digital devices, tick boxes, make notes, save the results. But if you prefer, it's also possible to print it, of course. And then the tool consists basically of 3 elements. There's a knowledge base with information, overviews, and best practice, easily to identify by the light bulb, and checklists that contain steps to follow, things to consider, and people to contact, as well as matrices decision trees that provide guiding questions and classifications. Yeah, and the tool will guide her through the preparation and planning phase. This is maybe good to know. It really has a focus on that phase and not on the implementation. So here you can see what is part of that phase and by which elements the tool guides through the process. So for example, there are checklists on participation, regulations, and infrastructure planning. There are matrices on local characteristics, the feasibility study, and financing ideas. And there are knowledge bases on project team authorities and stakeholders. And stakeholders is also one example that I want to show to you. So for stakeholders, you would find a table with important stakeholders from different sectors in the left column. And in the top line, you see topics that would need to be considered with the different stakeholders. So for example, towards combined transport operators, transportation vehicles, and units are topics that might need to be addressed. Then another example for participation, we have a checklist to prepare the important elements like a communication plan, consultation events, a stakeholder advisory group, and so on. So the checklist names the elements and then provides further information how to deal with them. And the user is enabled to pick the elements that are relevant for the specific topic. Yeah, relevance is a good keyword also in terms of important regulations. Considering that the tool can be applied in different countries, regulations, of course, might differ a lot, but not only between the countries, also concerning different types of projects. So this checklist here names regulations that might apply, and then the user can choose if they are required or not. Important regulations are, for example, building permits, environmental requirements, and railway law, among others, of course. But maybe the most crucial part of a revitalization project are financing options. And therefore, you find a table with all different financing options and their advantages and disadvantages that should enable the user to find the best financing options. Another important aspect in the context might be support measures. So the checklist here offers an overview with some examples of potential support measures, beneficial regulations, and framework conditions to aid planning and implementation efforts. Yeah, coming back to this slide once more, you can see that I've only highlighted a selection of aspects, and these are of course considered in more detail in the tool. But I really think the variety of aspects shows how complex the process is and how useful the tool can therefore be through the process of a revitalization. Yeah, but working on the tool, we even had many more ideas of useful information that could be shared. And this leads me to the learning platform and then also to my final slide. So finally, I would like to draw your attention on our beautiful learning platform. You find it at UrbFRail.eu. And the learning platform does not only provide the screening and development tool for download, but also video testimonials from all partner cities and many additional resources like a glossary and basic information on terminal infrastructure in case you're not yet familiar with the details. So yeah, please don't forget, take a look at UrbFRail.eu and please feel very free also to share the link with anyone who might be interested in the topic. Okay, so thank you. And if you still have any question, remarks, ideas, of course, we have now time for discussion a little bit, I guess, but also here's my email address in case you want to get back to me. Yeah, so thank you.
So thank you very much, Steve, for your presentation. I noted one question here, and maybe it's a good opportunity to answer this question. And for sure, if you have some other questions, please use the chat or raise your hand. The question is, have the tools been developed only for the Baltic Sea region, or can they also be used in other regions? I guess the answer is quite obvious. Steve.
Yeah, of course, the tools have specifically been developed for the needs of our partners, but the idea was also to have to make them usable for border regions, like not only the Baltic Sea regions. And I think there are some specific things that might come up in certain regions that we could not consider. For example, the Polish partners really had an issue with former mining regions, which for Berlin is absolutely not a topic. But I would say that like 95% of the tool is to be used in any region in Europe.
Yeah, I just picked another question from the chat and I have to format it, but you can read it already. How do you deal with a limited space in urban areas? Is it possible to use underground hubs?
That's a good idea, I guess, but unfortunately also a very expensive one. So we did not focus on underground hubs. We really focused on areas that are still available within the inner urban areas. Of course, the problem is there's not too much space still available, and if there's space, there might not be 740-meter tracks available for the terminal infrastructures. So we also focused on smaller spaces and how to develop them. But underground hubs, I guess they are possible, but yeah, I think they are not an issue yet.
Yeah, do you know about existing examples of underground hubs already, or in other settings, or?
No, I don't know about underground hubs.
Yeah. There could be for sure also the question of using old underground stations, for instance, also for sure as a limited place there to use it also for these things. That could be an idea, I guess. My question is. Within the project, did you made any experience or useful experiences from other partners from the other cities that could be adapted also to the Berlin case?
But the other partners had some specific issues, of course. So, for example, I told you about the issues in Poland that were not to be very much adaptable for Berlin, but also like from the Swedish partner showed that they also have the terminals around the city, and then they had the same issue of like congested roads and stuff. So I think the issue of all the partners was to make a better use of the railway infrastructure within the cities.
Yeah, I'm just observing the chat and see that I have time for another question from me. The question is, what in the case that the area to be developed is not your own, it's not state-owned, what possibilities could be foreseen to solve the situation?
Yeah, of course, it's always easiest way if the area is already state-owned, and then you can just make use of it. But I guess in most of the cases, that is not the case. So often the areas are owned by private companies or by Deutsche Bahn, and then you will have to find a solution to buy them, which is of course also not cheap for these areas, highly demanded in inner city areas. So yeah, financing is a very big topic, and there are support measures also by the federal government, which can be used in that case, but also that that funding programs from the final government, I think, needs to be a bit updated for that issue, because I think it's clear to everyone that we need to make use of that space, but it's not clear yet that it's also not cheap. So
yeah. And yes, I know for sure that Berlin has much space which former rail use already, but for sure in general there are also spaces with no rail use in the past. Then you for sure you have additional planning effort to set this area in the situation that rail could use by rail, and especially in Germany the planning procedures are not so easy and are long-lasting ones. So that I think is a big challenge also for that. But I think we have enough good practice examples in the world, also in Europe, where inner city terminals have been developed, and around these terminals there had been established specific services which are well connected with that terminal, so that it could have a positive impact also to the urban development.
of course,
Yeah. So, as we have some minutes left, maybe I could switch again to the questions slide we dealt some minutes before. If there are open questions, Christine, you might know the best which question we didn't answer so far, and I guess we have another 5 minutes to do so.
Okay, yeah, good idea. So then I would like to jump to the questions of Pierre. We've already answered the first one. The second one is how you identify non-craneable trailers with no structured ILU or IMO codes.
Thanks for the question. So far, that is very simply just happening by number plate, because as the person who raised the question is aware of, non-craneable trailers have no ILU code, since it by definition does not include them. The code system itself is nothing we ourselves have a lot of control over. So for our current processes, we are just using the number plate. In the future, I see some possibilities for a change happening there, either for the ILU code system or for a different approach, because as just said, the ILU codes, in our opinion, come from a time where there have been no loading and unloading technologies for either non-craneable semi-trailers or in general different unit types. They come from a time when there were only containers and craneable semi-trailers. And now, in my opinion, we should think about adjusting that system.
Okay, and his third question was, can you share tasks in pre-departure safety checks?
Very interesting question, because we're currently looking into that. As some of you may know, there are quite some old-fashioned processes of how to check the safety of rail cars, especially in combined transport, before they're ready for departure from the train. These tasks are typically carried out by a so-called wagon master, which is typically from the railway undertaking, so from the, in German you would say EVU, the company that is doing the traction of the trains. We as CargoBeamer are currently not doing the traction of our trains, so we typically have a Deutsche Bahn or BLS or something locomotive in front, which is also carrying out the wagon inspection process. However, we are currently investigating a project of how to automate that. We have some different tools and ideas here. Could be a camera system, could be a drone system, could be a mixture of different things. Could be like an entrance gate at the terminal that automatically scans incoming, outgoing units. I cannot share any findings here because that's a pilot project that is destined to go until I think summer 2026, so for more than a year. But we are aware of the question, and we also think that besides making loading and unloading much faster, the safety checks is also something which still have some more room for being a little more of a clean and 21st century process.
Okay. And from Peter comes a very specific question. Have you looked at Kingpin lock sensoring and monitoring? I think it's a brand. I
know what a kingpin is. Maybe for the general audience, a kingpin is a part. It's a part at the front of a semi-trailer, where the semi-trailer is. How do I say it? The kingpin holds the truck and the semi-trailer together. So it's the part that locks and unlocks the semi-trailer to the truck. It's therefore unlocked when the semi-trailer is placed on a parking lot and the truck would go away. On our trains, or on our rail cars, better to say, there are two mechanisms that hold the semi-trailer. The first is a kingpin lock at the front of the wagon, where the kingpin is locked towards the rail car as it would be locked to a truck. And in parallel, the side walls of our CargoBeamer rail cars, which are going up and down doing unloading, they hold the semi-trailer as well. So from a technical perspective, there are two holding mechanisms for the semi-trailer working in parallel. As far as I know, in terms of construction, there is no kingpin sensor as part of the rail car, but I am not 100% sure about that. I would need to check that back with the team. After 10 years of, actually more than 10 years of experience, I have not heard from any case where a kingpin lock didn't work in operations.
Yeah, the question of Peter is also on the interoperability aspect. Is there anything to say regarding the technical specification on interoperability for wagons?
Well, currently we are not selling or leasing those rail cars out, which means that we're not functioning as a rail car leasing company like VTG or those other companies out there. The CargoBeamer rail cars work best when they are part of the CargoBeamer system, which means the CargoBeamer terminals in the end. What we do, however, on the other part, is that we mix our fleets from not just CargoBeamer's rail cars, but also from existing usual railcar types. That means that the train typically consists of 85% of CargoBeamer rail cars and then 15% of either double pocket wagons or container wagons or similar types. And they are just part of the same train. They're interoperable from that perspective.
I have a very last question. Is it imaginable that your CargoBeamer concept could be also applied to inner city solutions? So I will raise the umbrella of both presentations, and what could be your solution to develop inner city areas with your solution?
Well, in my opinion, depends on what you view as inner city. If you look on the Kaltenkirchen terminal, for example, the terminal is right next to the Kaltenkirchen passenger station, railway station. So it's an integral part of the city. However, Kaltenkirchen as a city is quite small. It is like in the 25,000 inhabitants region. So it's no city compared to Berlin. In Berlin, like in Westhafen, for example, where I've actually just been on Friday this week, it is technically possible to install a CargoBeamer terminal if you have a site that allows it. So if you have the rail tracks, if you have an access for semi-trailers and trucks. However, you will of course generate some volume on the roads nearby the terminal, and that's typically not what city authorities wish for. Usually, a CargoBeamer terminal, especially considering that you will need 20, 15, 10, 25 sometimes hectares, is located towards the outer skirts of a city. Since sites are available there, since logistics is typically not happening in the center of cities, but rather on the outsides, since warehouses, sometimes ports are located there. But in theory, anything would be possible, I'd say.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you again, both of you, for your interesting insights. And now we are, as ERCI, in a good operation temperature to race to the remaining slides here. Thank you also for the audience so far. We have prepared a short feedback questionnaire as usual, and we are especially interested in your ideas for future topics, for future ERCI webinars. And maybe you can imagine to present yourself, your innovative solutions. Please let us know. Then, for sure, we will have the recording also of this webinar at our STARS YouTube channel, as usual, in a few days. And already the hint to the next ERCI webinar will take place in 5 weeks on the topic of innovative methods for monitoring rail infrastructure. The registration link is already available and also already available in the chat. So news from the ERCI network. We are starting with the highlight of this year. Tim is in the middle of this picture as the winner of the ERCI Innovation Awards in 2024. Several ERCI member clusters have already started their national or regional contest for this year's ERCI Innovation Awards. Each cluster has the possibility to nominate up to 3 applications to the European stage, and then the awarding ceremony will take place this year at Expo Ferroviaria in Milano on the 30th of September in 2025. Yeah, there is also a link on our webpage, which gives you some more details on that. So we have some current activities relating to internationalization or discovering new markets. For instance, we will be present at the railway interchange in Indianapolis. There is a possibility to exhibit as well as to be part of a delegation of ERCI. We are constructing a good and interesting program. We have already contacts with Class 1 railroads, and maybe it is of interest to you. If it is the case, please do not hesitate to contact us. So then second activity is a mission plan to Canada. Beginning of September. The agenda is on preparation, and some meetings are already booked, and further information will follow soon in order to attract you to be part of this business delegation. Then we have a further possibility to to serve a place for you at the Niles Railway Forum. If you are interested to exhibit at the Niles Railway Forum, it is takes place in Berlin. It is a big suppliers event. The main partner is Deutsche Bahn. If you are interested to have a small booth, please let us know. You will find some details on our website. So, coming to some funding opportunities, there are ongoing calls provided by the European Space Agency. The one is called Space for Intermodal Transport. The second one is called Space for Rail. If you have an idea or want to be integrated into one consortium, you might contact us, and we will see what we can do, which consortia are already existing, if your competence could be needed for one of the consortia, or you have a consortium already in mind and look for some additional partners, please let us know. The same for Horizon Europe funding opportunities. The work program 2025 is under finalization. Will be issued within the next few weeks. There is already a leak of the Horizon Europe work program for the different clusters when you follow the first link here on the slide. And there will be several info days of Horizon Europe, for instance, for Cluster 5, Climate, Energy and Mobility on the 6th of May. All of these info days are online, and you can simply register to take part in this info days by following the respective links. All the links are also in the chat. Coming to some project activities where ERCI as a whole or parts of ERCI are connected with, and I will hand over to my Italian friend Guido Antarani from DTEC. Guido.
Thank you, Lutz. Yes, I will run over the 3 projects that ERCI is involved in, or a partner of ERCI are involved. The first one is Leader 2030. It's about learning for European autonomy to deliver Europe's rail in 2030. This is a challenge because of shortage of raw material and or electronic components and other elements. In order to put in place what is ongoing in research, development and innovation projects on the Europe's rail. So you see the dates, which is until December 2025, the project Leader 2030 is running. And the aim is to strengthening the resilience of European supply chain in the railway sector. You see the different project news and connection to the social media and the project newsletter. Next slide is about the project Idealist, which empowers SMEs in tackling supply chain disruption and boosting advanced technologies. And we have seen already some application also today, but also in other ERCI webinars in the free industrial ecosystem. And certainly railway is in this mobility, transport and automotive ecosystem. Here again, you have all the information concerning this project. The project is based on 4 pillars: strategic foresight, technology uptake, supply chain resilience, and collaboration and networking. And I would like to focus on the technology uptake, which is done through a neck and match event. This is the second one. This one has a topic which is AI for the digital and the physical world, integrating the transformative potential power of AI in product, services, and organization. So we are until the 18th of April in the phase of collecting challenges I'm sure that all the listeners to this webinar have challenges. They can express their challenges filling the form which is indicated here. And then we will ask to solution provider to try to answer to the challenges. Then we will put all together in a virtual room, and this will occur on the 17th and 18th of June, where challenges and solution provider will exchange possibilities of doing business and go forward in order to increase again resilience of European SMEs and European companies generally speaking. Next slide. The third project is eBoost, which is based on there is focus on electromobility for the transport sector. There are several partners, as you see on the left-hand side of the slide. The connection and the hyperlinks are there and also put by Lutz in the chat. I would like just to underline the event which will put together the project and the EDI, the European Digital Innovation Hub on mobility services. It will occur on the 24th of April, and you are invited to register and to participate. Next slide. Yes, the big event which will occur in Zaragoza is the MISM, the Mobility Industry and Supplier Meeting. We promote this also because there are some funds for companies, SMEs participating to this event. 1,500 euros will be allocated to SMEs, which will cover part or globally the cost of travel and accommodation. And next slide, please, Lutz. It will be an opportunity to, according to the agenda, to meet, to improve your knowledge, and to hear also from good speakers what is about mobility and the industry supplier. What are the possibilities and the business-oriented meetings and B2B which will be organized will certainly increase this knowledge. Okay, I think that that was my last slide. Lutz, back to you.
Yeah, I thank you, Guido. I take the last minute not to forget to say that our next ERCI webinar is in 5 weeks on the 14th of May. And please, I will connect my thank you for your interest to ask you to fill in our feedback questionnaire. It takes only 2 minutes, and then we will see in 5 weeks. Have a nice time and see you soon. Bye-bye.